It's the Osceola's Seminole Sidelines. For more on the Seminoles, including Osceola's coverage from veteran Seminole insiders, message boards, Osceola virtual happy hours, and more, go to theosceola.com.
Hello and welcome to the Osceola's Seminole Sidelines podcast, which is presented by our new sponsor, Alumni Hall, where you will find officially licensed FSU gear for the entire family. Please visit Alumni Hall at alumnihall.com or visit their Tallahassee store at 1817 Thomasville Road. My name is Pat Burnham. I'm a football writer for the Osceola and host of Seminole Sidelines. I am joined today by our full panel: Osceola publisher Jerry Cutts, managing editor Bob Ferrante, Osceola recruiting analyst Charles Fishbein, and former FSU offensive lineman and Osceola football analyst Mark Salva. But before we get started, I want to remind our Osceola subscribers you can log on to the Osceola and click on the Alumni Hall ad to receive a 20% discount code for online purchases or your membership card to present for in-store purchases. All right, guys, we got a lot to talk about. As I said earlier, Florida State had day 2 of spring football yesterday, and I think we were all very excited about the fact that Mike Norvell has decided to let the media back at practice, at least the six scheduled practices so far this spring. And Jerry, I know for me, it's the longest I've ever gone in my entire life without seeing a football practice of some sort, 366 days. Number one, just talk about what you think Mike Norvell allowing the media at practice does for the program and where they are right now.
Well, I think it's very critical that they allowed the media to be there. And the way they did it was they let us get up in the upper level of the baseball stadium so we could spread out up there and had no contact with players, so it was safe to do it that way. But the real benefit of it is to the program is when writers come to a practice and see it with their own eyes, they believe it. And I think we're able to convey it with more conviction than we can when we just hear it from coaches in a press conference. Seeing is believing. And so I believe from my past experience in charge of fundraising for the boosters and assisting with ticket sales, that your ticket sales and your booster contributions will be increased as readers get more content that's believable. That, hey, this thing is looking good. We're excited by some things we're seeing. So I think it'll translate into ticket sales and booster contributions for the athletic department. For me personally, I've got to be sold before I can write these things. And I'll use the example of Mackenzie Milton. You can tell me all day that he's 100% well, but until I could see him moving yesterday, I had my doubts.
Yeah, and listen, I agree with Coach Norvell when he said, when he met with the media early on and his taking over the program, that he thought that the media could best help tell the story about what was happening with his program. And so I was certainly excited to be there. Had a great vantage point from the offensive field where we were, but certainly excited to be back out there. Now, we've got a lot to cover. A couple of the items we want to talk about is the quarterback battle. FSU looks like it may be utilizing a 4-2-5 alignment on defense next year, particularly against spread offenses. They won't go totally away from their 4-3 scheme. Want to get a little bit into that, but first of all, Jerry, let's talk a little bit about what we saw in practice yesterday. Obviously, one of the things that you and I notated after practice, that clearly you see indications that Mike Norvell and his staff are in their second year. Practice was fluid. There wasn't as much not knowing where to go, which you would think after a full season that would be the case. But they also have about 15 new guys coming into this program mid-year. So just talk about your overall assessment of practice.
Yeah, it was high energy. It was a really crisp, clean day, and it was, high 70s, mid 70s, and a little bit of a breeze. So it was a perfect day to practice if you're a player. But I thought the energy was fantastic. And to your point, Pat, it was because most all but a few players knew exactly what they were supposed to do and what the standards were. And I heard some of the coaches early in the practice imploring the veterans to help the younger guys. And I think, Pat, you made the observation that the coaches spent their time working on technique, and the veterans were doing most of the getting guys, keeping the tempo at a very high rate.
Yeah, and of course, the thing that I continue to be impressed with is the energy the entire staff coaches with. We saw Mike Norvell come out of the indoor practice facility and challenge Robert Scott to a race to the 50-yard line to start the team takeoff drill. And he has that energy, as all of them do throughout the course of practice. So that is something that we saw last year, and it's obviously a characteristic of this staff moving forward. They're in shorts in the first 2 days of spring. There were certainly some guys that stood out, but one of the things that you pay attention to when you get in shorts is who looks the part, right? So who are the guys you want to see coming off the bus first when you pull into an opposing team stadium? Who are some of the guys that stood out to you physically, Jerry?
Well, first of all, Jermaine Johnson, the transfer from Georgia, he'd be the first guy off the bus for me. That guy's a great-looking human being. The second guy, I think Amari Gainer's put on some very good weight. I like his look a lot. How about you, Pat? Who would be your first two?
Well, I agree with Jermaine Johnson. I mean, he just looks different than most everybody else on that team. He's in that Amari Gainer, that classification for sure. But you look at a guy like Josh Burrell, the early enrollee receiver. He is not built like a early enrollee freshman. He is mature physically. Then, of course, Jackson West, the tight end, another early enrollee, is well put together, very athletic. And then the kid that I'm fascinated by, I think Marcuston Douglas, the tight end, who is 6'4", 289 pounds, and you would think he would be a McDonald's chocolate sundae away from the offensive line, but you watch him run, and at 289, he can move extremely well when he wants to. So I'm looking forward to seeing how he develops. But certainly there were some standouts, Jerry. I know that you paid a lot of attention to the receivers, which they had some problems with drops in practice, but kind of you spent a lot of time watching those guys. Who stood out to you at wide receiver?
Well, Brian Robinson is clearly, I think he's a Sunday player. I mean, I think I'd heard about him last year, but he stayed hurt most of the year. I mean, he catches the ball like I remember back in the day, Hassan Jones. Hassan Jones, the ball you couldn't hear a sound when it hit his hands. I mean, really soft, natural hands. And I think Brian Robinson's got that. He's very fluid. I mean, he runs effortlessly. So he stood out to me as clearly the guy I'm going to watch the most. And then McClain, the freshman, came in, and he looked very good right off the bat. But to your point, Pat, when they were in just pure scale or takeoff, everybody was catching the ball. I mean, there were a couple of guys who dropped it, but it was when they got into the 11-on-11 on the 7-on-7 where the defensive backs were contesting it. And even though they were in shorts, they were doing a little bump and run. And that's when we saw the drops.
Yeah, they did become, once they were playing competitive football, you did see the drops continue. And Mike Norvell mentioned that in his press conference. It's something that he knows they've got to get straight. It was a bugaboo the last couple of seasons for Florida State. And, hopefully they will get that corrected as the spring goes along. All right, let's get to our first topic. All right. We asked Coach Dillingham in their presser on Tuesday how they envisioned the quarterback battle playing out. Was there a definitive timeline to name a starter? And he said that he anticipated that the quarterback battle between all four guys would last going into fall camp. And I want to ask each of the four of you this question. I'll start with you, Bob. Is it a positive or negative if FSU doesn't come out of spring practice with a clear starter at quarterback?
I think I subscribe to the theory that the teammates know who the number one guy is going to be. They're going to see it on the practice field. They may even tell the coaches. So, look, I think we all figure it's going to be Mackenzie Milton in the end. Should the competition go into August? Probably. I would argue that most Florida State quarterback competitions through the years, regardless of the head coach, have gone well into August. That would just be my presumption. But, Pat, Mark, Jerry, you guys have, followed this program longer than I have. I think you guys would probably have a better viewpoint on that.
Mark, I'll go to you.
Yeah, I don't think it's a negative. I think going in the fall, it keeps everybody interested going through the summer. And to Bob's point, I think everybody probably has a suspicion, but why you don't have to make that decision coming out of the spring, especially when it's wide open like this, unless you just had a clear-cut experienced guy that was the obvious team leader, especially when you're bringing a new guy in like Mackenzie and you want him to develop that leadership through the course of spring and maybe through the course of the summer. And I think it'll be better if he kind of earns it rather than just kind of giving it to him. I think we all want it to be him. We hope it's him based on, the rest of the guys that are there. Because we need something different. We need something with a little more whatever. But I don't think it's an advantage in this particular instance.
Fish?
Well, I felt when they brought Mackenzie in, the worst case scenario would make the whole quarterback room better just because they're going to have to compete harder. Half the problem they've had the last few years is, Blackman was basically handed the job and Francois was basically handed the job. And that's not how Florida State works. It's always been a program where guys competed, and that competition has made players better, especially at that position. Reading the first couple days of practice, and you can't take a whole lot from it. I think Jordan Travis is going to make Milton work for that starting job. And honestly, it wouldn't shock me to see him start the season as the starting quarterback and then Milton eventually take over. I think too many people are doubting what Travis can do, and this kid keeps staying in this comp. I don't think he's going anywhere. I really don't. And I think he's going to force a very difficult decision because, listen, let's be honest. They may not have promised Milton the job, but there was an understanding if he came, he was going to be the guy, or he wouldn't have come. I mean, he would have gone somewhere else. But I think Jordan Travis won 3 games last year. He's proven himself. And I honestly think he's not going anywhere. I really think this is going to go down to the wire to opening day against Notre Dame. I think Travis is going to make this kid work very hard for that job.
Yeah. And listen, when they went, Jordan was running with the ones until he did run with the ones all practice. But once they got to scale, they started intermingling the quarterbacks with different groups. Now, Jordan did look the sharpest in scale. I don't think he had a drop pass. Now, Jerry, the one and McKenzie, I think was 2 for 6 in the 2 series he had, but there were 2 drops. And then you had some coverage sacks. Now, I did want to talk to Jerry about this. We saw some what would have been coverage sacks or forcing the quarterback to run with the ball or scramble. It is scale, so obviously the DBs know it's pass. But what were your impressions of the DBs in scale, Jerry?
Pat, I didn't get a really good look at him, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I thought I'm going to pass on that question.
Okay. Well, yeah, I was impressed by Jarvis Brownlee. He's got such great change of direction. And, one of the things I did notice that they were doing, and they did it with all the players, but they were putting these big old mitts on the defenders during one-on-one drills to teach the defenders not to grab onto the receiver as a covering. And because we saw a lot of pass interference penalties last year, and I think they're trying to offset that. But certainly Brownlee stuck out to me. All right, switching to our next topic. FSU experimented some towards the end of last season from the North Carolina game moving forward with a 4-2-5 alignment. As Adam Fuller said after practice yesterday, they could not use that as much last fall because of the limited numbers of players available, either due to injury, with a Marvin Wilson Corey Durden's situation or just COVID numbers availability. They didn't have the personnel to run it. Does going to a 4-2-5 alignment with FSU only having 8 scholarship linebackers in the spring and with a surplus of DBs, including Jamie Robinson and Brandon Moore and Jaquez McClellan, does along with your other returning guys, does the 4-2-5 alignment give this team a better chance of success on defense in 2021? And Fish, I'll start with you this time.
I think the success is going to come down to that front four at the end of the day. You know, your back end's only as good as how much pressure those guys could get. And I think the strength of Florida State's defense is going to be that secondary. I mean, they've got numbers. They've got guys that have produced, like you said, Brandon Moore produced at a high level at UCF. He's back healthy. The kid from South Carolina was, one of South Carolina's better defenders. I'm very high on Travis Jay. I still think he's him. Akeem Dent has had some moments already this spring. They've got players on that back end. I mean, there's a lot of teams that would trade their secondaries with Florida State and roll the dice and go, hey, listen, you know what? These guys have the pieces. That front four is going to decide everything. If they can't get pressure, it's not going to matter if you have Dion Butler coming back, Derwin James and Jalen Ramsey, if they're back there. It doesn't matter. I mean, you've seen great secondaries. If the defensive front can't get pressure, they're not good. Especially now where these quarterbacks, I mean, look, Saban's one of the best defensive coaches in the country, and his teams are giving up 30 because if quarterbacks could get the ball rid of the ball in 2 or 3 seconds and all the advantages are on the offensive side of the ball. And what's going to stop that is pressure up front. And that's going to be key. Florida State couldn't get pressure last year. Their defense struggled. The back seven, we could discuss the back seven for the next 6 months. If they don't improve up front and get a pass rush, it's not going to matter who's in the secondary.
Bob?
I agree with everything Fish just said. The thing with the secondary is we've been seduced by the talent level for years with the secondary and just thought this is going to be incredible. And for multiple reasons, from coaching and scheme and pass rush, it just hasn't come together. So you ask yourself, what's the difference this year? And I think in a lot of regards, it's the talent you've developed. It's the guys like Travis Jay. It's the guys from the SEC who have come in, Bam Moore from UCF, a lot of optimism. If the goal is to match up against the personnel you are facing on offense, a lot of 3 receiver sets, running backs who can catch the ball out of the backfield, tight ends who can do multiple things, you've got to be good in a nickel package in situations to match up against that. You've got to be really, really good. I think the question is, does Florida State have those right 5 guys? Can they stay healthy for the long term? And if the answer is yes, the defense is going to be much better this year.
Mark?
Yeah, so there's one aspect here we got to be sure we understand is that if we're going 4-2-5, which is fine, and most teams we play will be into some kind of spread thing, so it makes sense. But I think what matters also is who those 2 guys are, because if going in spread as an offensive line coach and a running game guy, if I got 6 on 6, including the running back, then I like my odds. So stopping the run in that set is going to be really critical. Without that way you can play zone or combo coverages and do all the stuff that you need to do in the back. Getting pressure with the front four would be ideal. But the other thing it allows you to do is do some pretty good tricky little blitz packages that you can do, and you can get pressure that way. If we're so good in the secondary, we can play man coverage a little bit, maybe outnumber guys. But for me, can those front 6 stop the run? And so who those 2 guys are in the middle, where we've been pretty deficient, need to step up and be able to do run fits and stop the run in a spread set.
Now, when you say middle, you're talking about interior defensive linemen or the linebackers?
I'm talking about the linebackers. I'm talking about the 2 and the 4-2. Those 2 guys need to be, and here's the other thing. Are we taking Amari Gaynor out of the game, one of our best players like we did last year? To me, he needs to be a Mike linebacker in a 4-2 and be a playmaker and a blitzer. I think if you're taking him out of the game to put in another secondary guy, I don't know that you're making yourself better.
Yeah, no, and Adam, Coach Fuller actually acknowledged some of that in his press conference yesterday. That they did not want to force Amari into that will linebacker position last year because it's something they were not utilizing early on in fall camp. But he is right now. It's Amari at will and Emmett Rice at Mike, with Lundy and Dix backing those two guys up. So
which is fine
right.
if they're in a 4-3. But when you sub the nickel in, are you taking out Emmett Rice? Are you in keeping Amari Gainer in the game, or are you taking out Amari? That's the question that needs to be answered if you're going to do that.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I mean, Amari's your most dynamic defensive player, and my concern with the 4-2-5 is your two interior defensive linemen. Our entire front is a question mark. And when I look at who we've got in our on those interior positions, you've got Fabian Lovett, Robert Cooper, True Thompson, and Kayshawn. They played in there yesterday. We're not very deep and we're not very big in those positions.
You got Dennis Briggs in there as well. And yesterday they had Cooper and Briggs as the first two inside tackles, and then Lovett and Malcolm Ray as the second two. So certainly, you got some experience there with Cooper, who they think's, Coach Fuller said after practice they're really expecting him to turn it on this year and be a little bit more dynamic in the style of play, where he's very good at the point of attack, but there's some things that he can work on as far as making a play away from after he takes care of his responsibility.
The point being is, if you're going to a 4-2, you've only got 6 guys in there to stop the run, and I'm not high on any of them right now, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and we haven't seen them in pads yet, which we will do this afternoon, which hopefully will change our perspective. And we will be able to see a little bit more about what these guys are going to be able to do up front when you get the pads on, and at linebacker as well. But certainly, yeah. And, I think one of the reasons they've gone to this is because of the skill set of Jamie Robinson from South Carolina. He was utilized in a similar role by Will Muschamp, and he's going to be the guy that walks down in the box and becomes that extra linebacker, extra run player. And, he's a very physical kid at South Carolina if you watch any of his films. So, Mark, to answer your question, when they're in that 4-2-5 alignment, both Emmett Rice and Gainer in the game, it's more of a base package than it is a sub package.
Right.
All right, guys. Well, listen, let's take a 30-second break to hear from our sponsor, Alumni Hall, and we'll be right back in 30 seconds.
Alumni Hall, where you'll find officially licensed FSU gear for the entire family, including brands like Nike and Champion, plus great gifts for your favorite Seminole and home decor, too. Miss some of the old Seminole throwback logos? Check out our College Vault collection. Shop online at alumnihall.com and let our great customer sales team ship to you within days, or pick up in store in Tallahassee. You'll find us in the Miracle Plaza Shopping Center on Thomasville Road. Students and military get 10% off in store, and Osceola subscribers get 20% off in store and online with their digital membership cards. Alumni Hall.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Osceola Seminole Sidelines podcast, sponsored by Alumni Hall. All right, guys, we started talking a little bit about defense before the break and started talking about interior play. And one of the real football drills that we did get to see was pass rush between the offensive line and defensive line. And guys that stood out to me in that drill offensively were Thomas Schrader, who was running with the second team at center. The thing that impresses me is you watch him, he's got some natural leadership ability, and he's very competitive when you watch him go in those pass rush drills. And he had a very good day for a guy that's relatively new to center, but he looked strong. Jalen Goss had some very good reps, a guy that's very long and athletic who's lining up at left tackle. You like to see that continue to go on. And then on defense, Quayshawn Fuller, Jermaine Johnson, and the guy that we forgot to talk about yesterday was true freshman early enrollee Joshua Farmer. He had some really good reps against the offensive line, got back to the quarterback a little bit, and he was very impressive. But to go back to start talking about the defense, it looks like Leonard Warner is going to stay at a Fox defensive end position with Derek McClendon competing for a spot there. And then, of course, you've got Quayshawn and Josh Griffiths competing with Jermaine, among others, at strong side defensive end. And as we learned, Kier Thomas is a little bit limited right now. Coach Fuller hinted at that in his press conference yesterday. So we will see how that plays out. Like I said, we've covered the linebackers in the secondary. You got Jerry and Jones. At one corner, you had Jarvis Brownlee. At the other corner with Brandon Moore behind those guys, and also Akeem Dent. And then it's strong safety. You had Brendan Gant, who was wearing number 5, which I did not know he changed his number. So I was trying to figure out who that was for most of practice. And then Travis Jay at free safety with, about 5 guys competing with those guys for playing time. So that's kind of what it's looking like on defense right now. Other guys will assert themselves as they get into pads, I'm sure, when it gets a little bit more competitive. But overall thoughts on the defense, Mark, as far as personnel returning?
Yeah, it sounds like they had some of the guys that we were hoping would get in there. And I'm pleased to hear that Jarvis is running first-team corner. I think he's going to be a real emergent player coming back. The concern is always going to be the defensive line and who's going to emerge from that group. Without a real proven dominant player like we're used to having, we got to get back to that. And somebody's going to have to emerge, whether it's Cooper or the 3 technique. It's a work in progress, and hopefully another year in this scheme will be a lot more beneficial to these guys.
Yeah. Fish, your thoughts on the defensive personnel coming back as a whole?
You look at the guys up front, a lot of them, when they recruited them, weren't, unless you were unrealistic, weren't going to be guys that were going to come in and make an instant impact. Those guys, you know who they are when you recruit them. But guys like Quayshawn Fuller, McClendon, these were guys when they recruited them. If you evaluated them in high school, you're like, all right, they're going to make an impact as sophomores and juniors. Well, that time's come. They've been on campus for 2 years now. They need to start to develop those guys. Even if they don't have high-end skill set, they still have to produce, and we've seen guys that haven't been the greatest players go out there and they work hard and they produce. They put up numbers. Somebody's got to step up and make numbers. I didn't even see last year effort plays on the D line or effort sacks. Guys that just, hey, I'm gonna get to the quarterback no matter what. And that's how Florida State's always played. When it was under Mickey, even there was guys that they played till after the whistle, and these guys have to want it too. I mean, they've been offered. A lot of these guys weren't offered by Division I AA schools. They were offered by other Power 5 schools. They have talent, but they were developmental guys. Well, it's time for them to step up and be developed, and that's how you're going to see what these coaches are able to do. They got to produce. They don't need a 15 sack guy. They need 2 or 3 guys, a money ball. They need 2 or 3 guys that are going to produce, 10, 11 sacks at that DN position. You just can't have 1 sack or 0 sacks. And it's not just about sacks. They didn't get pressure on quarterbacks. They gave guys all day to throw. These guys are a lot of that's effort. Not every guy, they don't have a Brian Burns on that D line, but there's guys there that are talented enough to get to the quarterback, and they've got to make it happen. Guys have to step up. They've recruited, maybe they haven't recruited at an elite level up front, but these guys, like I said, have been offered by a lot of schools that wanted these guys too. Quayshawn Fuller was a kid that a lot of schools wanted. All 3 Florida schools wanted him. SEC schools wanted him. He's got talent. He was a kid that was there when Jimbo ran his summer camp. He was a kid that they evaluated and offered under Jimbo. So it's like 3 coaching staffs have liked him. It's his time to step up. And that's, they've got personnel on that side of the ball. It's like I said, it's not the elite level guys up front, I do think their linebacker position is better, especially, you guys like Amari Gaynor. I like Amari Gaynor. I think, Emmett Rice he's a player that I wasn't sold on when he came to Florida State just because of a lot of character issues, but he's a guy that's matured and stepped up. These guys have to do their jobs and not make excuses. They weren't bad on defense last year because of personnel. They were bad because of effort and lack. They just didn't have drive. It didn't seem like guys wanted to play for Florida State last year. These guys have to improve on that, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I thought we saw a little bit more competitiveness out of this team in yesterday's practice. Jerry, what are your thoughts on the defensive personnel and level of effort you saw?
I would agree with you, Pat, and I would agree with Fish. We with a more energized, highly motivated defense last year, we win a couple games that we didn't win. And I don't know, it's the secret sauce, but it seems to me we saw that energy yesterday. And that part of it on defense, I'm optimistic about.
Well, I don't think you can underestimate the value of having a full spring and with these guys. I think a lot of that, maybe that tentativeness might have come from not knowing the scheme well enough and worried about making mistakes and that kind of thing. I think, having a full spring and fall camp with this group, to Fish's point, some of these guys have talent, maybe can emerge and be the guys they need to be. So I think that's going to be real critical here. I think that might be able to turn some guys loose a little bit.
Yeah. Bob, any further thoughts on the defense personnel just across the board?
Yeah, it feels like the competition is really good at all the position groups. I think what's missing is kind of who's that alpha guy, maybe in the secondary. There's not an Asante Samuel. There's not a Hamza Nasruddin. I'm not saying Travis Jay is going to become the next Hamza, but you need somebody to be that kind of thumper and enforcer in the secondary. It feels like the front four could be and should be more effective and put more pressure on the passer. And that maybe that's not sacks, but at least it's pressure. At least it's hounding the quarterback and forcing some bad throws. I think we'll see that moving forward.
Yeah, I do too. And we'll learn a lot more about this team as we get to watch padded practices starting tonight and then again next week and the following weeks after that. So we'll have more updates and we'll get a little bit more into position analysis as we move through the spring. Obviously, it's a big weekend Florida State-wise in athletics. A lot going on. Baseball team is having its first road trip to Virginia Tech. Softball just beat Arizona, the second-ranked team last night. They got game 2 tonight. But probably the biggest story, Bob, is what's going on at the ACC men's basketball tournament. Obviously, Florida State had its game against Duke canceled. Is supposed to play tonight against North Carolina, assuming that game's going through. But we did learn that whoever wins against the Florida State game, North Carolina game, will play Georgia Tech in the championship game for the ACC because Georgia Tech had to cancel its game, and I don't know either Virginia against Virginia. Virginia had to back out, right?
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about what's going on in Greensboro. We thought we were going to have an ACC tournament, and we're not having much of a tournament.
Yeah, this is the matchup everybody on Tobacco Road thought that we were going to get was Florida State versus Georgia Tech. It doesn't feel right whatsoever. But I think this is the unfortunate result of, frankly, not padding time between the regular season and the ACC tournament, creating a little bit more of a bubble. It's going to be a challenge. As we've said for the last year, enjoy the games that we get, truly enjoy them, and kind of try to brush off the frustration of the games are lost. I feel for Virginia because that's a team that clearly could have run all the way to and raised a banner with a title. But, Florida State, North Carolina, obviously going to be a pretty incredible game. And the Seminoles really just have to play better on the road, limit those mistakes. We've seen turnovers and three-point shooting add up as real negatives. And that's, Florida State's strength is to shoot the three ball really well, 38.5%. But when you're shooting in the 20s away from home, and this is going to feel like a road game in Greensboro, of course. So they've got to just play cleaner, have better possessions, and out rebound Carolina. Florida State's a team that can win the ACC title. They really can, but it's going to be a tough one. And it's going to be part of, like you said, a great weekend, for Florida State to be playing in golf, tennis, volleyball, softball, baseball, all these matchups, top 10, top 25 teams all across the campus. March is really a fun time.
Yeah, Jerry and I peeked into the softball game through the fence, and I think we were a little bit worried about getting called where we weren't supposed to be, so we didn't stay very long. We did try to check out a little bit, but it is a huge weekend for Florida State, and it was nice to feel the energy around with softball getting ready to play and with the football practice going on. It was nice to see that activity on campus, and certainly it was great to be back on campus and observe some of these things, and can't wait to get back out to practice tonight, watch this team in the full pads. But the switch back to football, I know that I pay attention to a lot of what's going on around college football. I know you guys do too. And I had an interesting conversation the other night when I was out about some rule changes I would like to see in college football. There's some, whether it's the punitive targeting penalties or things of that nature. If you were a commissioner of football, college football, what would be one rule that you would like to see changed for 2021? And Bob, I'll start with you.
On any instant replay, you put 90 seconds on the clock. If the referees, the crew up in the press box, the crew in Greensboro in the ACC's case, if they cannot clean it up, figure it out within 90 seconds, the play on the field stands and you continue the ball game. There's just too much time lost with all this review.
I agree, and I think they should do what the Alliance of American Football did, and that's institute a sky judge, a additional official in the press box that can help clear these things up and actually speed up what you're saying, the process of these reviews. And I think because right now the replay official is reactive, not proactive. And in the Alliance of American Football, the sky judge was proactive. He was an official, but he was just in the press box. So I agree I would like to see a time limit. If you can't discern what has happened in 90 seconds, let the play stand as called and move on, which gets me to one of my pet peeves. I'm going to save mine for last. But Fish, what would you like if there was a rule or two that you could see changed in college football, what would you like it to be?
The targeting rule, I just don't think that I saw one game, it was like 2 years ago, where the first play of the game, a team's top linebacker made a questionable hit and was out of the game. I think you almost have to put like a point system on it where, like, all right, you give the guy a 15-yard penalty and maybe you punish him like that way instead of just punishing the whole team for a whole game and then maybe the next game. I would really like for them to, change that rule a little bit. I understand the safety of it, but a lot of the calls are questionable. I mean, I've seen guys go out and it's like a bang, bang play and a guy put his helmet down and he went into somebody. Unless it's like blatant, I don't think the guy should be kicked out of the game that game. Maybe it's like, all right, he does it 2 or 3 times and he builds almost like flagrant fouls in the NBA that they build up a point system and then they have to sit out the next game. But to take a guy out the first play of a game, and sometimes it's the best player on the defense, I just don't like the rule. And I understand, like I said, they're trying to protect guys, but I think they're overprotecting them.
Yeah, I think there's too many moving parts for that in football. Guys are moving too fast. They're changing directions. We've seen guys that have been thrown out of games because they were trying not to hit somebody and they go to an unnatural movement, and then the running back or receiver ball carrier makes a move or ducks and is responsible for the head-to-head contact as a defender himself. And I agree it's too punitive. What they need to do is modify that rule somehow to whether when you do call that, if it's more than a 15-yard penalty, maybe it's a set number of plays that guy cannot come back in for on defense, whether it's 12 plays, 15 plays. 15 plays is almost an entire quarter. in college football, more towards 20. But again, I agree with you. It's too punitive. Mark, what about you?
Well, I agree with you guys on the targeting. First of all, a flagrant one or a flagrant two, like they do in basketball, or, yellow card or red card, like they do in soccer, for the reasons you just said, Pat. Those bang bang plays are you just get put in a bad position. That's my first one. My other thing is not so much a rule change, but how they adjudicate pass interference and illegal use of the hands in the secondary. It's nothing that frosts me more than a DB making a play on a 3rd and 13 or 30, and all of a sudden the team gets a first down because he put his hands on the guy a little, just touched him. I think they need to err more on the side of the defense being able to play football. And I'm an offensive guy saying this, but how many times do we see a team that's 3rd and forever get bailed out because of a bogus or a questionable or a really ticky-tacky, illegal use of the hands or pass interference call? I think, to me, I would like to see them let the secondaries play a little bit more.
Yeah, to quote the Bad News Bears, let them play, let them play, let them play. Jerry, what do you want to see change in college football?
I like both points you guys made. And, with targeting, how many times have you seen a running back lower his head and attack the defender, but it's not targeting, And so the targeting rule needs to be reviewed. I agree with Mark on it's a joke. Some of the calls on pass interference you got to let the defensive back make a play. And you'll see offensive players using their hands, and it's not offensive pass interference.
Yeah, I got one more too. So I thought about this a lot. I think if they're going to give a targeting call to a secondary guy hitting a receiver, I think they need. I'm kind of saying this tongue in cheek. They need to give the quarterback a penalty too, because the quarterbacks can throw into coverages that they shouldn't be throwing into and exposing the receivers. You throw it out to a cover 2 hard corner, or you throw a square into a robber safety sitting there, and and so he smashes them. He let his receiver in there. I mean, to me, that's that goes back to the bang bang nature of targeting. But
I think you call that, Mark, an attractive nuisance for the defensive back. I mean, if you're going to throw it in there, I'm going to whack him.
Right. Right.
And the receiver calls it a medicine ball. So Mark wants to outlaw medicine ball, or penalize quarterbacks for throwing medicine balls.
Absolutely. I mean, quarterback's mentality is, well, hell, I'll throw it in there. It doesn't matter if he hits him hard, then I'm going to get a penalty anyways. I mean, it's yeah. I mean, I know everybody wants wide open offense, but I think it's gotten swung too far the other way.
So I've got a third one, and they're going to review it in June. But this thing with flopping to slow the game, to stop the tempo of the offense, guy falls down on the ground. They'll review that in June. But I would suggest that if the guy's hurt, he's got to sit out 3 plays, 4 plays. If he's cramping up, then make him sit on the sidelines 4 plays.
Make him sit on the series. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and he can't get back in if you use a timeout. That would help resolve that too, because that's a lot of times what they do if it's a really key player. The team will call it, especially if it's a pivotal situation, where they'll call timeout to get them back in. But yeah, that's going to be interesting to see how that works out. That's for sure. But there, you do see some guys go down where it's not exactly right, but you can't question the guy's health, right? I mean, but yeah, they got to do something about that. And I've got 2. One of them does not matter at all as far as the way the game is played, but double numbers, I hate them. Get rid of double numbers. You're not going to play 99 kids in a game. You've got 85 scholarship players. There's no reason for them to be double numbers everywhere. It drives me crazy trying to, particularly at a football practice more than a football game, trying to figure out who is who. But then the other one on the field that actually does have an impact on the competitive nature of the game is I'm seeing way too many first downs that are questionable being given to the offense. And we're talking about where the official just points that finger on the sideline down to indicate first down to the lead official. And I've seen too many where that ball is too close to that first down marker not to adhere a measurement to. And this is a game that we coaches preach. It's about every inch. It's about every inch. And to me, it takes away from I don't know how to best, but I've just seen it's happened too much. I mean,
you know what?
They need to measure.
I agree with that. So here's the deal. We're still doing this with chains and sticks, right?
Yeah.
With all the technology that we have. With all the technology that we have, we can draw lines now for first downs. You see it in soccer, and I watch a lot of European soccer. I love it. But they can judge offsides by the millimeter. If a guy's shirt sleeve is over a thing, they judge that. Why can't they do that with first downs? Have somebody set the point where the ball starts, and then use a computer to set a line 10 yards and adjudicate it that way. I mean, it's ridiculous. We're using chains and just random judgments by the officials.
Yeah, you can chip the ball. I mean, we've already seen one professional league do that. They were doing it for gambling, but you can certainly do it for first downs. And I think that, we're technology, we've got it. They listen, look at tennis. You got 130 mile an hour serves that they're able to discern on camera with technology, whether they're on the line or off the line by, as you said, centimeters. So I would like to see that change. I just see too many first downs. And listen, that's done to move the pace of the game along because of television, try to finish a game. We need to start having play-through commercials in football like we do in other sports so that we do not hurt the integrity of the game to fit it into a 3.5 hour window. I know when I'm at home watching a non-Florida State game, I turn it at commercials from whatever game I'm watching. So they need to – it's done in part to – quicken the pace of the game, and I don't agree with it. But anyway,
the only football games I watch live are FSU games. Every other game, I'll let it get an hour ahead or so, and I'll just
zoom to. Yeah. I'm the same ways. The television people need to catch on. Okay, we're going to move on from that. We've all got a chance to gripe about rules, and we got 6 more months to do it before the season starts. All right.
I thought we make Burnham the commissioner of college football. That's what I thought.
Hey, I'm good with that. It'd be a very entertaining sport. Dorothy is not in Kansas anymore, and either are Les Miles or Jeff Long. Guys, this was interesting. I had started hearing rumors about Les Miles not coming back to Kansas as early as regular season, but obviously he has some very serious allegations facing him from his days at LSU. In today's world, and Jeff Long, probably one of the reasons he's no longer at Kansas, he didn't use anybody as a background check. He didn't go out and hire a search firm, which does kind of the dirty work that Les got caught up for in. And then he paid Les Miles a $2 million agreement to leave, which I think ultimately helped cost Jeff Long his job. But Bob and Jerry, I'll start with you guys. How does this happen, given all the background information that these schools go out and collect, or in Kansas's case did not collect? How did he survive at LSU with all this going on in the background when you have a letter from the AD suggesting that they fire him because he has repetitively done this? Why? I mean, I don't think people this is just another example of how powerful these football coaches at these major institutions are. How does a Kansas situation develop like this?
Let me go first.
Yeah.
It's called sin. Sin. We've all been taught it in whatever church we go to. It's about integrity and character. And some people have it and some don't. And when an institution hires people who lack character, we all sin. But that's what background checks are for. And if you are an athletic director and you do not hire a search firm, you are asking to be fired. You have to do your background. You may know exactly who you're going to hire, but go ahead and hire a search firm to cover your ass so that if something surfaces later, you have plausible deniability. But that's what it's about. Bad decisions are made by bad people.
Yeah, well, and I'm just the thing that's fascinating to me is, again, LSU was scared to make a move for some reason. Now they've probably opened themselves up to more liability than they ever could imagine, and I'm sure to same extent, probably Les Miles is opening himself up to some litigation as well. But I just, again, LSU swept it under the rug, by all accounts, swept it under the rug. Bob, how does this happen in today's society with all the information we have? And it was fairly well known around LSU's campus, and especially the athletics department, that this was going on.
I don't know which situation is a more stunning lack of leadership, what happened at LSU or what happened at Kansas. The LSU situation, clearly it was overly politicized. It got to the president chancellor level, probably got to the governor level, as far as why Les Miles was allowed to stay at LSU, why he was not disciplined, why he was not suspended, reprimanded, had money taken away, some penalty. Why it happened at Kansas is what Jerry said. There's an arrogance that an athletic director does not thoroughly vet beyond asking Les Miles point blank, is there anything on your record that would come back to haunt you or us at Kansas? Athletic departments are not set up to do background checks. That's not what athletic departments do. They hire search firms to insulate themselves from these problems. And we all wonder, why do you pay $100,000 to hire a guy that you wanted to hire anyway? Well, you do it as an insurance policy. And it wasn't done. And this is why you have this problem. It's an eye-opener. I hope a lot of athletic directors around the country have learned a lesson from this, quite honestly, so that things like this just don't happen down the road.
Yeah, this is Louisville type. I mean, this is Jurich, Patino, Petrino type level stuff. I mean, I am shocked at what people will do to win a football game and protect a program, or any game really. But anyway, Jerry, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to say that you got to take it a level higher. Athletic directors are managed by presidents of the university. And when you hire an athletic director, there's certain demands you need to make on that guy about integrity, because athletics is the front porch of a university, and your image is at stake. So why the president of the university wouldn't demand a background check is also beyond me.
Well, I think, too, you got to consider what's at stake. The money that's at stake to have a successful football program makes people do really, really questionable things. And to Jerry's point, it goes to integrity from the very top all the way through the athletic department. There's a lot of money at stake. So hiring a successful football coach and however they're successful is paramount. And it's unfortunately, there's a lot of money at stake on these deals.
Fish, any thoughts on Kansas?
I actually had this conversation just the other day. Listen, they knew what this guy had behind closed doors at the end of the day, and anybody that says anything different, I think, is just kidding themselves. They saw an opportunity to hire a coach that was very successful, and winning trumps all. And that's the problem with society now, is winning these things keep happening and everybody acts surprised, I mean, heck, look at what happened at Baylor and Penn State. I'm sorry, those programs should have been shut down for 5 years for what happened. And people are like, well, they didn't really know. Come on, coaches know what's going around. How this whole head coaches have total control over their whole program until something happens. And it's hey, I had no idea. All right. Every coach, name a coach that doesn't control everything in their program. Literally knows where every player goes, who they're dating, what's going on. And then all of a sudden something happens. Oh, I had no idea that guy was doing that. It's just, it's a big business. And Les Miles was a big name. Kansas was a terrible program. Trust me, if Les Miles had won 9 games last year, he'd still be the Kansas coach today.
You are probably right about that.
This was an easy – listen, they were terrible, and this was an out. And this was an out without paying them. Just like with Jeremy Pruitt at Tennessee. Oh, we had no idea he was cheating or this or that. Like, the reason you hired him was for all those reasons that you fired him for, all right? Like, you can't act stupid after the fact. And that's what these ADs and everybody around winning has become so important. And that's why you got to appreciate someone like Pat Fitzgerald out of Northwestern that has so many things again. Yeah, they have great facilities, but it's not easy to win at a Northwestern, and he does it the right way, and he keeps that long time. These coaches want to move from one job to the next, and they get I said once you start paying coaches $5 million, $10 million, that forces coaches to do things they don't want to do in life. I mean, you have people, you have that lifestyle. Once you start making $5 million, $6 million, $7 million, you're in a different lifestyle bracket. And you have a lot of people to support. And a lot of times you're going to make bad decisions if it comes down to it because you want to keep that job and that status of what you have. And
check the paycheck.
Yeah, you check. Hey, man, that wife checks that paycheck too, man. There's a lot of people involved. There's kids involved. You know, kids in private school. You don't want to send them back to public school. You know, I mean, dude, you're going to do. Hey, and I'm not going to sit here. Listen. I'm the last person to judge people. All right, I've done, some stuff in my life that I'm not proud of. But you know what? I mean, I don't know who you can blame. I mean, the pressure on these programs to win is so great. I mean, you see it in college basketball, you see it in college football, and it happens like every 2 weeks, and somebody's like, oh my God, I can't believe this guy did that. It's more believable that Les Miles did do that stuff. I mean, that he did it, so it's like, hey, listen.
I saw 2 things on Les Miles. One, when he was not at Kansas yet, and then one, he took the job at Kansas, and Kansas was doing a Miles to Go special on ESPN Plus. And when his first day on Kansas, he arrives on campus, and it's not really funny, but it's ironic now that he said it. But he walked into the office for the first time, and he noticed that there was only one student assistant, which is one of the things he's gotten in trouble for, or in alleged trouble for. And so anyway, now that that's happened, that's the one comment I think about watching, I think, all 5 episodes of that show. Now, Fish, you helped transition us into our next topic. We're talking about cheating. All right.
Hey, I'm good for something.
That's right. Segue right into what I want to talk about. And it's 6 degrees of separation to Florida State because of the schools involved. But Valdosta High School head coach Rush Probst was secretly recorded by one of the head of the booster club at Valdosta High School, among other things, and asking for $4,500 per month for his own use and a gas card and a truck and to have his mortgage paid. He also accused the University of Georgia and the University of Alabama and their head coaches of offering kids up to 6 figures to either attend their school or stay in school. In the case of Nick Chubb, is this the case of maybe Rush talking too much to try to get what he wanted out of the Valdosta Booster Club, or is he being very forthright? He indicted a lot of people. Paul Bear Bryant Jr., he sold him down the river. Hugh Nall, who was a former college assistant coach, now runs a very successful trucking company in Albany, Georgia, was indicated by Rush Probst as being highly involved in cheating at Georgia. Give me your thoughts on Fish. I'll start with you because I know you probably know. I know you probably know Rush.
I've never met him. Listen, I'm still surprised that this guy kept a marriage and kids for 10 years separate from the rest. Like, honestly, that's impressive. Dude, I can't keep any secret away from my wife for 30 minutes. Like there's like 10 years. I mean, I don't know how he did it. Like This guy's my hero. Dude, they're like 10 years of hiding a kid and a marriage.
And listen, and just like Kansas, Valdosta High School let go of a very, very successful coach who just happened to be Tate Rodemaker's father. But they had to know who they were getting in bed with. His past is well to acknowledge how. First of all, now I'm getting off on another tangent.
Wait a second.
Alabama and Georgia, but how important is high school football that you've got to hire a guy like Rush Probst to be your coach? I mean, there are guys that are looking to put whistles in their mouths everywhere in this country that are of higher character than Rush Probst.
Hey, Albert Means' booster ended up at the bottom of a staircase, and they said he fell down him. I don't know how this guy's still alive. Like Rush is going to end up like like one of these guys under a stadium, and not because they named the stadium for him. Like he's pushed. When you start accusing those teams in the South of cheating, like I don't even joke about it. Even on a phone call, like I don't want to be run over by a pickup truck with an Alabama flag on it. All right, like let them do their thing, man. Whatever they want to do, good luck. But
I think Georgia ought to hire him to work in their math department after listening to him do math on his tape recording.
Oh my, Rush,
Mark, Jerry, or Bob, y'all have anything to add to our Rush Probst, Georgia's cheating, Alabama's cheating conversation? No one's getting involved in this. All right.
Yeah, let me throw out the important question.
You got to consider the source, number one, like Fish said, But then you also think back. You think to that Logan Young, Albert Means situation. I always thought that was weird because, here's Albert Means, who was a defensive lineman. Guy didn't even score touchdowns. He was, to my eyes, a questionable talent, anyways. $120,000 they paid that kid or something like that. Yeah. So, I mean, we talk about questionable judgment in this industry. Boy, that was a big one. So, again, you're surprised, but you're not surprised.
Yeah, I've got a couple comments on it. One, to Mark's point about, questionable decision-making in this industry. There's questionable decision-making in all industry, because going back to my point about sin, it's pervasive. I mean, you see it in government, you see it in industry, and in college football or college basketball is no different. It's run by people making decisions. And, the thing I hate about it is a thing like this fuels that group of fans who believe that everybody's cheating. Everybody's cheating at a high level. And I'm one who's been around this business a long time. And I definitely think that everybody is breaking rules and everybody has cheated. There's no saints in any industry, but it's a matter of degree. And
yes.
When you're talking about paying guys six figures, I just hate it that there's a bunch of people on message boards that think everybody's got a bag man and everybody's cheating at that kind of a level. I know it's relative, but I don't think it's good for the sport. I think NCAA enforcement has a tough job. They're underfunded, but you need to hold people accountable and to maintain some integrity in the sport.
Well, let me ask you guys this. Once name, image, and likeness is allowed, does this stem the tide of cheating and recruiting or to just enhance it?
Let me say this. I think a lot of cheating that goes on is ego. There's some, and Mark, you saw it when you were at FSU. There's some guys out there who are big fans of FSU, and they want to throw a little money around, and $100 handshake has been around since the 1940s, and it's usually ego guys who want to feel like they're somebody special, and I think that will continue even after NIL.
Yeah, I agree with you. All right, let's move on from.
I was just going to say the notion that college football is an amateur sport is an absolute joke to me. And that's a lot bigger conversation about what to do with it. But this is not an amateur sport. There's too much money involved. Coaches get paid too much. The value of the players is tremendous, and people are going to want to monetize that value. And there's no getting around it. I mean, there's an opportunity there for a lot of people, and it's
Hey, Mark,
college football. Yeah.
Mark, let me ask you this. You were recruited in 84 and you coached in the 90s. Between the 80s and the 90s, did you see amateurism change? And
I felt it. You could felt it. You could feel the tide changing, and it started. Who I blame in all this is ESPN. I do. When they took over, when they took over college football, and they started marketing it the way they did with all the production and all. That's when the money really started the influx of money just grew exponentially. When they took over essentially college football, and then CBS jumped in with the money they give the SEC. Anyways, that's the profile of college football. You felt it just swelling during that time. I always tell people I love college football. I love coaching college football, but I hated the business of college football.
Well, it can be a dirty business, and it's a tough business. There's no doubt.
When you're talking $1 billion contracts for TV, there's no way the NCAA, I don't believe the NCAA is going to tell ESPN, hey, listen, we're going to put your biggest brand teams on probation for the next 2 years. I just think the money's too great, and they're basically going to have to turn a blind eye because the money. It's too great. The team that's going to get punished is probably like a Coastal Carolina, not an SEC team.
Yeah, that's probably right. All right. Hey, moving on from the cheating or whatever Roche Probst is trying to say they did at Georgia, Alabama. Let's move on to a little bit more about spring football. Obviously, we have our FBS spring football, and we're very glad to be able to go to practice. But has anybody been watching the FCS games on ESPN Plus? Has anybody watched? I think Deion's off to a 2-0 start. Anybody checked out any FCS football this spring?
Deion's done a good job over there. They had a big win against Grambling. I think it's like the first win in 10 years or something against them. So I think Deion's on a fast track to becoming a Division I coach. I think he's done such a great job in a short amount of time, and he's got a brand. And some athletic director is going to sit there and go, "Hey, let's give this guy a chance." And he had a great recruiting class. I mean, he pulled in 3 or 4 Division I kids this year down to his level. So, props to him.
Would you guys watch spring FCS football more if it was actually on television as opposed to being live streamed? Yes. Or is it just something that doesn't interest you?
Football's football. I'll watch anything, man.
Yeah, I'd watch it. I honestly, I didn't even realize it was being televised on ESPN Plus.
I go and film semi-pro football every weekend, so that should just tell you what I think.
Well, hey, I watched Howard's opening game against whoever they play. I think I can't remember who it was. But it was Delaware State, and it was fun to watch because it was football. But it was one of the worst games I've ever seen in my life. As far as
I didn't say it's good football. I just said it's football.
I watched every snap, and I loved it. And I know they're not going to move FCS football to spring, but I still say there's a market for football in the spring in this country. I just wish somebody could figure it out. But
hey, Pat, let me interrupt a second. Mark, you played with Deion, and I wanted to make a point that I wanted to get your comment on. Deion has a brand, but he also has a brain, and that brain created that brand. And I've always believed that he's got a good IQ, and his experience in college, pro baseball, pro football has exposed him to some of the best programs and coaches in the country. I've got to believe that brain was running the whole time, and that he was making observations on how he would do it based upon his exposure to a lot of great coaching and programs. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd agree with all that. But here's the thing about Deion that I think gets lost in all his flamboyance is that's a hardworking dude. Deion, what people don't realize, he was always the first guy on the field and the last guy off. He elevated people around him to be better. We talk about the competition that was born in our program during that time. And, his class was largely because of it. And he was the leader of that class. I can't believe I just gave props to the 85 class. I'm 84, anyways. But yeah, well, I know all my boys are going to be cussing at me now. Anyways, all that being said, he's a hard working guy with a tremendous work ethic. And what is the one thing coaches always pride themselves on, that they outwork everybody. And he's putting in the time and the effort and the thought to do it. And to your point, Jerry, what he's been exposed to coming into this, he's not like your normal rookie coach, right? He's been around football all his life. He's been around smart football guys, and he's a smart football guy himself. So is it a surprise? No, the guy's energetic. He's got a tremendous work ethic. He's charismatic. He attracts people around him, and he makes people around him better. And so I don't know why we're surprised. I'm not.
When he interviewed for the Florida State job, he gave a very impressive interview, and some of the people expressed surprise. And I said to him, I said, why would you be surprised? What in his background would lead you to expect anything other? And but yeah, to Fish's point, I think he is on the fast track. And I think, of course, Florida State would have taken a gamble to bring him here when they hired Mike Norvell. But there'll come a day, I think we'll see him in Division I.
And there's no doubt. I mean, he needed to have some experience as a head coach at a lower level before he takes on a job like Florida State, that you need an experienced guy to take over a program like this. Now, Kansas may be in the bargain market for a new coach, and Deion would probably bring them some publicity they can't get any other way, but we'll see. But yes, he's been very successful. It's been fun to watch, and I've enjoyed the FCS games that I've watched online, and I think it's fun to watch spring football. But yeah, Deion's done a heck of a job. It's going to be fun to see how this year plays out for him and what the future holds. Guys, I hope when we meet back here next week, we're talking a little bit about an ACC tournament championship for the basketball team, but we'll certainly delve back into football. We will have seen 2 more practices by the time we return next week. And of course, if you're listening to Seminole Sidelines and you're not a subscriber to the Osceola, we ask that you go to theosceola.com and check us out. You can get a 20% discount off our annual rate of $74.95 by entering the code FSU20, FSU20 in the discount code field, and that'll get you 20% off. We hope you will give us a try. If you want to give us a try for a month during spring ball, when we got baseball and football and softball and golf and everything else going on, we do have a monthly rate of $6.95. So we hope you go to theosceola.com and check us out. And we appreciate everyone listening, subscriber to the Osceola or not, and look forward to coming back next week for our 3rd spring football edition of Seminole Sidelines, presented by Alumni Hall. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.
This has been another edition of the Osceola's Seminole Sidelines. To subscribe to the Osceola, go to theosceola.com. Go Noles!